Everybody settle in, get comfortable here. And I do think we need to always remind people that it's not necessarily election day, it's election week, or it's even election month, okay? Right. However, Abdul, that's not what some right-wing, frankly, Trump allies are already doing. So Christina Bobb, one of his former lawyers, yesterday said on a right-wing network, there should be absolutely a result no later than the middle of the night, meaning tonight, or early Wednesday morning. I think those areas that don't have a result is going to look very suspicious. In other words, already planting the seed of doubt.
That's absolutely right. So I'm from Michigan, and we know that in Wayne County and Detroit, they count votes a little bit later. You have a higher density of people, of course, and so fewer election officials counting more votes. It's going to take more time. But this is sort of a way of trying to set the table around the fact that really only the rural voters or the suburban voters are the ones that you should be paying attention to. And so it really is worrying because, well, this is a structural reality of what it takes to count votes.
And this is why, I mean, all the races are important, and I know we're all watching, you know, Senate Pennsylvania, Senate Georgia, but the three races that I think are most important are Christina Karamo in Michigan, Mark Finchem in Arizona, and Jim Marchant in Nevada. They're all running for Secretary of State. They're all election deniers. They have all suggested in some way that they might not certify elections, that they might refuse.
Unless they win.
Unless they like the results. And they've tried in the past, that they want to try again. I think those might be the most important elections. You might not feel them. I understand pocketbook issues and crime. I get that. But that's the future of future elections and democracy.
But what I would say is, remember, we've seen this movie before. This is very Trumpian. And actually, let's remember that some of the members of the legal team that were behind Trump's legal strategy in 2020 are working in these very states. They're trying to set up a narrative that says, if it's not a red wave, something went wrong.
Yeah.
And so that's part of why what we're doing is so important, to remind people it's going to take time. We've got to be patient. And the thing about that is, that means the system is working.
Right.
That means votes are getting counted. That means we're working out whatever questions there might be about provisional ballots or what have you. That's how it should be, to make sure that even the votes that are cast later today in California get counted with the same veracity as those that get counted earlier
Yes,
tonight.
except I worry that the people who are most susceptible to the suspicion are not watching right now.
Fair.
And so all of these seeds that are being planted, then what, Charlie?
Well, look, in Pennsylvania, there are 1.1 million absentee ballots. None of them could be processed until this morning.
Yeah, by law,
And
right?
it's by law. Now, the legislature, they could have changed this. They could have allowed the processing of these things maybe a week in advance, but they didn't. They chose not to do it. So we're probably not going to have an outcome tonight. It took us till Saturday to do 3.5 million in 2020. So maybe it'll take a couple days to get there.
Let's talk about some of the issues that are on people's minds as they tell us when they come out of the voting booth. So these are a couple of voters in Wisconsin who are just sharing their differing philosophies, basically.
I think it's really about saving our democracy and making sure that people have the right to vote, kind of fighting the political divisions. So, yeah, it's about making we can continue what we've continued to do.
The economy is definitely a big one, and to be frank with you, it's just like there seems to be much more care about the sexuality of people and not people struggling to pay their rent or paying their mortgage.
And there it is, Abdul. I mean, they capture it perfectly.
Yeah, one of the really interesting outcomes of a Times Siena poll that came out just about a week before the election was that 70% of Americans agreed that democracy was in crisis, but only 17% of them attributed that to authoritarianism. The rest of them talked about corruption and the ways in which a lot of democracy feels like it's had the talons of big corporations put into it. And I think that as we think about what comes out of this election, it's going to be really critical for us to be asking, how do we make sure that beyond saving the ability to actually vote for your representatives, we're also asking, how do we make sure we remove the obstacles that a lot of folks feel like are getting in the way between their political will and the outcomes of our actual public policy?
I've been covering lots of races over the past, we all have, and to me it feels like Republicans talk a lot more about gender and pronouns and quote-unquote groomers than Democrats have on the campaign trail. But Republicans are also talking about crime and inflation in ways that I think just get right to voter fears that are real in many cases. And I don't think Democrats were wrong to talk about democracy. I think it's one of the most important issues. But you can't go out there and say the economy's great. You can't be Joe Biden and say the economy's strong as hell. You can't be Ron Klain and say, you know, everything's fine, we're not planning for a recession.
Yeah.
You just can't tell voters they're wrong to have fears about the economy and crime. I think they could have done it all. They really chose to sort of marginalize those issues.
Well, first of all, we never want to tell voters they're wrong because they surely do not like to hear that, let me tell you. Look, I think, though, what you're seeing with candidates, there's not a single candidate on the Democratic side that has only run on a single issue. Because I think, as we saw in that tape, voters are carrying a number of different issues.
Absolutely.
The economy is important. They are worried about crime. They are worried about democracy. And so most of the ads I've seen, and remember, there's a lot that's going on under the surface, grassroots organizing, canvassing, that isn't as much what we're talking about on television, but that is going directly to some of those deep concerns.
On democracy, look, Republicans overstate voter fraud. Democrats overstate voter suppression. It's easy to vote. We run good elections. The problem is what's happening after the elections and people who have a predetermined outcome in mind. That's the problem.
Absolutely.